And now the floor is to Melanie Vay, de Université Paris 1. She presents a paper about the disqualification of public enterprise and service of general interest and as legitimate categories of European public action in the 90s.
Thank you. Do you hear me? It's okay? Yes. First, I would like to thank the organizers, and particularly Giuliano Garavini, and I must say it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. My presentations exposes in the first part the main lessons of my doctoral research, which endeavor to understand by which processes the categories of public enterprise and service of general economic interest as GEI has been progressively disqualified in the lexicon of European public action, in view to interrogate fundamentally the contribution of the European community to the transformations of the mixed economy model that the member states had in common since the post-war period. It returns in the second part to a particular episode of this long history, namely the failed struggles in favor of the SDI Charter in the 1990s. I will go to my first point, the problematization of the public economy at European stage, 1968-1997, the main lessons of my doctoral research. Is it Europe that ordered the privatization? Was it in Brussels that the crisis in French-style public service public à la française, has been played out? That was the starting puzzle of my research. My main hypothesis is that the failure to bring out a separate status of the public economy refers to the impossible aggregation of a European network of professionals and knowledge of the public economic sector compared to the powerful world established around the concept of competition, which has entrenched itself professionally and academically within the very heart of the European project. As regards the theoretical frame, I mobilized the concept of strong program, which refers to a relatively unified set of interpretations of European economic governance structured around key elements from which derives a status of the public economy specifically European. It is used to designate a strong program of competition driven by the entrepreneurship of actors united in a European world of competition, and that brings together three key elements: a unified market, equal treatment of public and private enterprises by competition authorities, and European indifference to legal structures of enterprises, and which aims at the functionalist mechanics of public-private alignments of the European economy by the laws of competition. The methodology combines the sociology of social world and the sociology of institutions, and as socio-historical analysis, it serves as an instrument of denaturalization to open the black box of European categories. The research relies on a diverse array of source material, official archives of the European Union, private archives, academic literature, grey literature from European institutions and scholarly associations, and press articles, and so on. Concerning the outline and main lesson of this research, by restoring from the origins of the European construction at the end of the 1950s to the 10 years of the Single Act in the 1990s, the long processes and the tangible methods of transformation of the public economy in contact with European policy, the research highlights a historical process of problematization of the European public economy, of which it analyzes the different singular historical configurations between 1958 and 1997. The first part of the developments focuses on the period of establishment of the common market between 1958 and 1968. This is a time of the pioneers of Europe, most often linked to reformist fractions in the national spaces, and bet that Europe can be the proper vector of their professional ambitions. To nebula that clashed during the negotiations of the Treaty of Rome are trying to be reborn in the form of coalitions united around a common program of European economic governance. But why the emergence of a European world of competition is initially a success, that of a European world of public economy fails, notwithstanding the successful creation of a Public Employers Union, the European Centre for Public Enterprises, Centre Européen de l'Entreprise Publique, or CEEP. So, at the origins of the common market, it was in political and doctrinal struggles that first took place the crystallization of a combined principle of public-private equality between company and enterprise and European indifference to legal structures of enterprises and core to a strong program of competition. The second part of the developments examines the period of consolidation of the common market between 1969 and 1986. It shows how the European world of competition takes advantage of the first European knowledge crystallized in law on the public economy to implement concrete practices and thus determine the uses of the treaty's rules, and reveals also how the CEP is still struggling to establish itself as the hard core of European world of public economy, carrying an alternative project to the strong program of competition. The period is characterized by a process of integration by stealth, a silent and subdued legal revolution, which relatively escaped the vigilance of national authorities. Faced with the state of affairs, the CEP wants to better assume its role of European watchdog of the public economy and adjust its initial strategy, but forms of past dependency necessarily complicates its reversals. So during this long period, it is via the legal, bureaucratic, professional, academic entrepreneurships of more and more actors involved in competition policy that takes place the gradual trivialization of a principle of public-private equality in competition and indifference to legal structures of enterprises in community law and in European policy, which serves as a vector for an incremental mechanism of alignment of public enterprises with the private model, both from the point of view of their managerial practices and their lobbying practices. The third part of the development focuses on the period corresponding to the first decade of the single market between 1987 and 1997. It allows us to observe a process of hardening of the European status of the public economy that aligned with the private sector, which takes the form of an acquis communautaire, that is, a principle, an implicit of European policy, now very costly to question. This appears to be the result of two opposing and contradictory processes. If this acquis manages to take shape and to persist, it is thanks, on the one hand, to the successful mobilizations of the European world of competition, which immediately seized the single market frame of reference and its potential for action, and on the second hand, the failed counter-mobilization of the European world of public economy. If it finally emerges, this world still has difficulties to unite around a common program of government alternative to that of competition, due in particular to the influence within the nebula constituting its core of reformist fractions, seeking at the same time to use Europe at the level of modernizations of public enterprises. The commitment to a process of establishment of trans-European networks in the electricity sector appears to be the trigger of these counter-mobilizations. This project calls into question the status and monopolies of the French public company Électricité de France, EDF, flagship of the French model and historical engine of CEP. Excuse me. EDF's reaction is the focus of emergence of the European world of public economy, but bringing to the fore a national model as its limits in the European debate. Hence the choice of the nebula formed around EDF and CEP to shift its public economy promotion strategy to the frame of reference of SGI. This reversal is a success since the counter-mobilization outfront in the demand for general revision of its status in the treaties. But attempts to promote SDR Charter and to renegotiate the basic principles of the treaties associated with the public economy aid in failure. Thus, from the very years of the single markets, the principle of equality in difference was solidified in the form of an acquis of European policy. I then go to my second point and focus on the failed struggles in favor of a European SDR Charter. The attempts to promote a SDR Charter fall within the context of the establishment of trans-European networks and served as a premise for an attempt to revise the treaty in order to bring about a rebalancing between competition and SDI. The processes of completing the single market and building these networks are to the advantage of the deployment of the strong program of competition, which puts pressure on the enterprises responsible for fulfilling SDI mission, particularly the large French monopolistic public companies. The increasingly hostile charges of DG competition provoke a counterattack initiated by the CEP and the French authorities, who mutually undertake the promotion of SDR Charter. Relayed by President Jacques Delors within the Commission and the Socialist Group within the European Parliament, it is the subject of a French memorandum submitted in March 1993. Although the Commission convened an intergroup to put it in reflection, this one gets bogged down quickly, which finally puts a stop to the proposal. So, these counter-mobilization are a failed attempt to promote SDIs in European policies. From the very beginning of the single market, DG Competition threatens its policy towards public enterprises and SDEIs. The attitude and initiative of its leaders, backed by powerful support groups, determined the CEP to assume the leadership of a strong program of public economy and thus fight better against the strong program of competition and its European project of eliminating the economic public sphere. This strong program is established in the form of SDI Charter. This remobilization of CEP finds support from other civil society organizations and French political authorities. The NGOs Réseau Service Public, led by Pierre Bobby, union representative within EDF, and X-Europe Réseau, led by Christian Stoffaes, strategic director of EDF, the Mission EUREC for Europe Equipment, and the Commissariat Général du Plan, General Office of Planning, are at the forefront of these mobilizations. The Charter although manages to realize certain support groups among the European institutions, but the rallying of the member states in the Council is timid. A majority fringe of MEPs gives its assent to the Charter, and the Socialist Group is itself at the origin of a draft. A majority of the representatives of the European and Economic and Social Council is also in favor. In contrast, the balance of power is unfavorable to the Charter within the Commission, and the work of the Inter-Service Group is aborted, due in particular to the fierce opposition of DG Competition and the legal service. So this counter-mobilization are also an attempt to resist what I call a public turn of competition policy. Between 1987 and 1997, three commissioners with different profiles, but sharing the same hostile attitudes towards public economy, succeed each other at the head of DG Competition. Peter Sutherland and his predecessor, Franciscus Andriessen, first assumed the display of refocusing on the public economy as a problem. Leon Brittan and after him, Karel van Miert, take the initiative to promote this approach more widely in the public debate. This is also the case, on his own way, of the Director General for Competition, Klaus-Dieter Ellermann. The remarkable voluntarism of these actors is a stimulator of the mobilization of the actors advocating a strong program of the public economy. If the initiatives of the promoters of a strong program of the public economy bear witness to the gradual emergence of a transnational world, their failure is due to the blocking of the Commission, which is revealing of its overall attachment to the strong program of competition. To conclude, I would like to make an analytical presentation of the forms of institutionalization that have allowed the status of the public economy aligned with the private model and based on a principle of equality in difference to emerge and to consolidate as an acquis. This sheds light on the concrete processes of transformation of public enterprises and SDIs in contact with European policy, but also the way in which the competition paradigm has become anchored at the heart of the European project. First, one finds the diffuse form of political academic co-construction of Europe. Groups of actors from the European world of competition have thus never ceased to invest European academic spaces and to practice a powerful political doctrinal activism. Conversely, although CEP has made an ever-increasing contribution to the production of European knowledge on associated with the public economy, its isolation on the European scene has not allowed its entrepreneurship to be commensurate enough. Judicial and legal forms show how the European world of competition has aligned itself with a strong program of community law in order to serve a strong program of competition encompassing this principle of equality and difference, which form the basis of the status of the public economy aligned with the private sector. Institutional and bureaucratic forms show how much the particular shape taken by an institution is linked to the resources of its members and highlight the essential role of actors capable of navigating between different spheres. They reveal the institution characteristic of each of the European world studied and also show how these institutions forge an identity and strive to make themselves legitimate. The institutions that characterize the European world of public economy refer to dominated pole in European field of power, unions, NGOs, parliamentary assemblies. Among them was things in particular of the French EDF and the Italian IRI, pillars of the CEP, whose senior managers have relatively accommodated themselves to the strong program of competition, having taken it as a lever of modernization of public enterprises and emancipation of themselves vis-à-vis politics. Finally, professional forms show how professional identities are grafted onto institutional configuration of each of the worlds. They show how certain actors seize the strong program of competition to build an identity and to accredit their professional skills, and also show how the professional figures of the public manager transformed in contact with a strong program of competition. It is therefore at the intersection of these various sedimented forms, all at the same time, doctrinal watchword, legal category, institutional style, professional identity, that is built in a process of circular reinforcement, the institutionalization of a principle of equality in difference, which confines the public economy to an exceptional status. Thank you for your attention.